Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I am the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. And our headline for the month is, "The spring is coming. Will a strong real estate market come with it?" And in this show, we talk about real estate activity within Plymouth County. In this first segment of my show, we talk about activity for the month of February. This show being taped in March, St. Patrick's month, as many of us call it, is a report on what happened during February. And you'll see come across the screen some bar charts. The first chart you'll see is a chart on deeds, the number of deeds that were recorded in February. You can see, looking at the chart, that January and February are relatively slow months at the Registry of Deeds. There were 474 deeds recorded at the registry in February, down slightly from the 518 in January, but up from the 406 in February of last year. That's a good positive trend. At the registry, we have a 10% increase in sales from last year at this time, and that is only 2 months data. The next bar chart you'll see is a bar chart for mortgages. The number of mortgages has dropped significantly over the past year. You can see that in the chart. There were 893 mortgages recorded in February, down from January, the 1,042 in January, and down significantly from the 1,986 in February of last year. When the interest rates went up, people stopped refinancing. And although there's some great rates right now out there for people who would want to refinance, when you compare it to what it's been historically, the fact that it is higher than it was a couple of years ago, a lot of people have dropped out of that market. We also track in this show the number of foreclosure deeds across Plymouth County. Those numbers are very low, even though the bar chart shows a little bumpiness. There were years when we'd have hundreds of foreclosure deeds recorded in a month. 47 were recorded in February, up slightly from the 36 in January. Less and less people are finding themselves in trouble. Last year, we recorded 51 fewer foreclosure deeds than the year before. And right now, there are still some people in trouble, though it's less than before. Foreclosure notices you'll see in the next bar chart. There were 43 foreclosure notices recorded in February. Foreclosure notice is when a person is in some trouble and the mortgage owner is moving forward towards a foreclosure. It's part of the process. They have to file a notice of foreclosure. And so that is 43 for the month, up slightly from 38 before. The next chart you'll see is the number of foreclosure deeds and notices across Plymouth County by communities. There are 26 towns and 1 city in Plymouth County. You'll see the high numbers of those happen to be the city of Brockton. This particular month, Middleborough showed some issues, and usually Plymouth has always been second to Brockton in terms of foreclosure deeds and notices. In this particular month, they dropped to third position. Still a concern across the county. One other quick thing I want to say in this segment is we've opened a training room at the Registry of Deeds at 50 Aubrey Street on the first Thursday of every month from 9 to 11. We offer to the members of the public, obviously municipal employees and professionals that are in the real estate market, to come in and get trained on our system, whereby you can do your research through the internet. And with those as a introduction and the real numbers that we saw in February, we'll be going into segment 2, which is the topic, spring is coming, will a strong real estate market come with it? And I'll have 2 guests in that segment. I'll have Bill Cohan of Keller Williams Realty and Arthur Boyle of Performance Appraisal Services, talking about that theory, what is happening in the spring market. Thank you.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Get your GED Pep Talk and find free classes at yourged.org.
Welcome back to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. In this segment, we always try to do something educational in nature. And I've got an expert in the industry here with me today, Bill Cohen from Plymouth. Bill, the topic of my cable show today is spring is coming. Will a strong real estate market come with it? I know that's a question that you're asked all the time. You're around Plymouth a lot, very involved in the community. I know the Community Preservation Act and other issues that you're very involved in, and you're also, in your private life, a realtor. Let's talk a little bit about where we're going. The winter's been very tough. We're taping this show in the middle of March. And by the way, happy St. Patrick's Month. So what's your opinion of what's happening out there?
Well, from my vantage point as a real estate agent, but also as someone who's involved in the community, I chair the Community Preservation Committee, and in that capacity, we work on affordable housing issues. I also serve on Plymouth Housing Incorporated, which is an entity that builds community housing, affordable housing in the town of Plymouth. Having been involved in the community on a housing level, but also in my private life as a realtor, dealing with the spring markets and the fall markets and the trends that we've been experiencing since pretty much 2008. Last fall was a market that was looked at as an intensity that we hadn't seen in some time. I think that it had a lot to do with the inventory. Even though people feel as if when you drive around your town in southeastern Mass, there seems to be a lot of properties for sale, the inventory's actually been dropping over the last couple of years. Right now in Plymouth this morning there was about 267 houses for sale. That number's been fluctuating throughout the early part of this spring market for a couple of weeks. Usually at this time you'll see an inventory that's closer to 300 or in excess of 300. At the height of the market, it was close into the fours. But right now, the inventory seems to be stable. The trends right now, when you're working with a potential buyer, mostly your first-time buyer, your downsizer, your upsizer, they have a different idea of housing right now compared to previous years. And that is, they're looking for something that's efficient, energy-efficient housing. They're looking for a property that may not be as big in terms of its maintenance issues, or a home as big as its maintenance issues, or the energy consumption needs of that house. So you look and see that the first-time buyers are much more strategic. They're not looking at housing as something that's performing like stock, but something that they need to have in relationship to where they work. And that's another issue. Village centers where people can walk to things, whether you're an upsizer or a downsizer or a first-time buyer, they like this idea of being in an area where you could walk to get the paper, or there are commuting options available. So this spring market, there seems to be a well-informed buyer that's looking for all of these needs to be met. At the same time, you're looking at qualifications for buying a little bit more rigid than they had been in the past, which is a good thing because we don't want to get people into housing that they can't afford. Right. So the market right now looks like it's going to be a healthy spring market, but a very wise buyer and a very wise seller. The sellers that are out there are highly motivated. They want to talk, but they do want to at least maintain what value they have currently.
Yeah, one of the things that we've seen in our data, the recordings at the Registry of Deeds through January and February, that sales are up. They're up about 10%, believe it or not, compared to last January and February. And January and February aren't really good benchmarks because they're always the lowest months of all the years that I've been registered. And average sale price has gone up a little bit across the county. And it just seems like people have been really held back in January and February. Even though where New England is, we should expect cold weather and the storms. Right. It really has seemed to put a damper on people searching for property.
The weather does play a role and always has played a role. Right. But in this market where prices have come down as much as they have, and where the interest rates are down, buyers are out there. They're out there in the fall and they're out there in the spring, but they do appear in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the summer, looking for housing. So there is a population that's out there looking not in the traditional times of year. But right now, and as you get into the first couple of weeks of March, you're pretty much at the beginning of your spring market. It actually starts to begin around February with the listings start to slowly increase. And you can say that there is an intensity out there right now with the buyers looking for a property, in sellers being in a position to negotiate. So there is a healthier atmosphere with a lower inventory, with a lower number of buyers and sellers. You do have this trend that stabilizes the prices. I don't see the prices coming down as much as have we seen in other markets in the last 5 years.
So you have a chance to talk to the viewers out there. This is a good market.
Right.
PAC TV broadcasts on many local communities, Plymouth, Duxbury, Kingston, and Pembroke. What would you say to the people watching this show why they should enter the housing market right now?
Well, I think it's an excellent time to find housing right now because the interest rates is still extremely reasonable compared to previous years. In the inventory out there, even though it's lower than previous years, there are opportunities to negotiate with the sellers. For buyers, it's still very much a buyer's market. So if you're looking for housing, this is an excellent time of year to begin that process. And if you're a seller, it's a very good opportunity to get onto the market because of the low inventory. I do hear my clients say that are out looking that they wish there was more to look at. And so the sellers could benefit from that because this is a time when they need to get onto the market in the early part of March. Because as you get closer to June and when the school buses start rolling or stop rolling and vacations begin, that's when your spring market kind of tails off. So the window of opportunity for your potential buyers is now, and it's a healthy market to get into because of these interest rates and these prices for the buyer, and again for the seller, it's an opportunity to take advantage of a low inventory. If you have a house that is turnkey and is ready to go, as a seller, you're in a very good position. There are a lot of properties out there that are still short sales and bank owns, and they come with a duration that can be frustrating to the potential buyer. So as a seller, if you're ready to go and can close in 30 days, that's very interesting to a potential buyer.
The next guest I have in this segment of the show, Arthur Boyle, who I'm sure you're aware of from Performance Appraisal Services. We're going to talk a little bit about the average sale prices, and he does that work in his job, that they've gone up. And basically, by that happening, it's taken a lot of people out from underwater that have been very hesitant to move forward. And I tend to agree with you. I think the opportunity is there, particularly with the short inventory, for people who don't want to go through long, prolonged visits every afternoon for people looking at their homes. It's a good opportunity to get on the marketplace. So tell me what would happen. I'm looking around. I see Bill Cohan. I want to give him a call. What's the first thing you do once you get contacted by a buyer?
Well, the first thing we're going to do is sit down and try to find out what the needs of the buyer are. That's important. Where they want to live, where they work, what are their expectations. You really have to understand where your buyers are coming from because you have to take on this responsibility of searching for a home that would meet those needs. There's a lot of resources out there for both your typical real estate agent and your typical buyer to work together to find those properties. At the same time, you have to look, if you're representing a seller, it's the same thing. The first step is getting the house prepared, making sure that the utilities are in a working condition. I know many people stay and watch at home the home channel where they talk about selling homes and flipping homes, and they tell people really what you need to do. You need to clear out the clutter and you need to streamline the property as best they can, showcase the home with neutral colors. So the buyer can understand what he's looking at. He or she, when they come into the house, the distractions are very helpful. So when a seller is preparing, the first thing they need to do is get out there and get the property in order. Then they need to reach out to a series of real estate agents and ask the real estate agents for a comparable market analysis. That's the first thing a seller needs to do, is get a handle on the value of their home. And you need to talk to more than one real estate agent. You need to talk to a number of them. They'll be more than happy to come over, look at the property, come up with analysis. That's the first thing the seller has to do. The first thing the buyer has to do is understand the lending process and understand what they're looking for a property.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show with your background and experience. We could talk about real estate for hours, and we certainly could have gotten into some of your other sidelines that you talked about earlier. Can you give out contact information for the people that are watching this show?
Yes, I can be reached at 508-789-5012. That's my line, my phone line, or you can look at my service at southshorebill.com.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining me, and I'm sure I'll see you around some of the St. Patrick's Day festivities.
Exactly. Yeah, Shamrock.
Yeah, we got a little shamrock here to promote the month. Thanks, Bill.
Very good.
Right.
How you doing? I'm Officer Chris Bufflany with U.S. Capitol Police, Ceremonial Unit, Bagpiper. We're here at the U.S. Capitol today honoring the Taoiseach of Ireland and Mr. Boehner and welcoming the President for the Friends of Ireland.
Tied up with a black velvet band. Well, I'll say,
So I want to thank Bill Cohan for his perspective on the spring market. And I have another expert with me today that I want to speak with him about his perspective on the spring market. Arthur Boyle of Performance Appraisal Services. Arthur.
Hey, John.
Good to see you, as always. We're longtime friends and always appreciate your opinion. And it's nice to have an appraiser in our midst because, like us, you work with real numbers.
Well, we go back to a court case that you won in 1989 or 1990, so
Yeah.
it's about 25 years.
That was one of my first pro bono cases. A young fellow from Brockton that was denied by the MIAA to play basketball, and because of an age waiver issue, and the MIAA wouldn't give it to him despite the fact that his mother had been homeless and had drug and alcohol problems, and that was the reason he missed school. And with your help back in your Malden days,
Yeah, that was some time ago.
yeah, you helped us in testimony, and we got him allowed to play, and he got a scholarship.
And he played professional ball in Europe
He
eventually.
played for the University of Cincinnati Bearcats. He played in the NCAA Sweet 16s and Final and Eights, and he ended up having his own business in Cincinnati, and that type of thing is great for everyone.
It's great when it works out right.
It did. So let's talk a little bit about the real estate market. As I mentioned when Bill was on the show, our sales have gone up in January and February, even though that's a really slow time of year.
The number
For-
of sales
for-
have increased
Yeah.
and the prices have increased.
And the prices have increased. And I think I wanted to hear your perspective of the increases in prices, because I think it's been helpful, because there have been so many people concerned about being underwater and concerned about the sale price of their home if they sold it. And I'd just like to hear what you have seen over the last few months as an appraiser out there.
Well, we spoke, a couple of appraisers and I, at a breakfast several weeks ago, and we were saying, you're seeing the values that you saw about 2002 to 2004 right now, with a few exceptions, the water-influenced properties, the ocean fronts, the pond fronts, that kind of thing. They're creeping up a little faster than some of the others. And you don't get as much action on the main streets, you know, Route 123, Route 139, that kind of thing. You know, those aren't selling quite as fast, but the days on market really tells a big story. And we went back to 2003 recently, and there were houses on the market for 6 days, 9 days, 14 days, where it's still, you know, a 30 to 45 to 60-day period if a house is priced right now. But the people that were underwater, some still are, but most have caught up. And, you know, I have a good friend who bought in February of 2007, and I said to him, you couldn't have paid any more for that if you tried.
Right. So, but what would you tell people now? We have viewers from multiple communities here. They'll be watching this show, wondering, is this the right time to get into the real estate market? Is this the right time to list your houses? Should I be looking to upgrade or downsize?
Well, I think if you're looking to upgrade or downsize, your decision is almost made for you, that if it's time, it's time.
Right.
But the combination of good sale prices and still low interest rates, and you're not going to get the 2.5% that was around for a very brief time, or 2 3/4,
Right.
but a 4% interest rate or a 4.75 interest rate even, that's like getting money almost free. I mean, you and I were in business in the 80s when it was 10.95 was a
I
bargain.
remember it was higher at certain points, even.
Yeah, 17% I
Right,
think at one point.
sure.
And that was like putting your house on your MasterCard.
Right, right. So as far as the buyers of property, and they're obviously concerned about having an appraisal come in to meet their mortgage demands. It's gotten tighter on the mortgage side in the rules and regulations that any borrower is going to face than it was 7 or 8 years ago, that's
Oh,
for sure.
clearly you're more highly scrutinized.
So-
You're absolutely right.
So just give a little description of how you approach a property that you've been referred to for an appraisal.
Well, the first thing is, to your point, the property appraises properly. That's becoming a focal point in the P&S, in the addendum sections, is that the house has to appraise for at least what it's being purchased for, because they don't want to have the borrower putting in extra money. And it does happen, but it's rare. We're seeing the buyers being, better qualified buyers. They're, 10% down, 20% down. There's still markets where you can get to 3% FHAs and things like that, but you're seeing more of people that are, selling a house to buy a house so that they've got a little bit of equity and a little bit of money for a down payment. And the market's not too adversely affected, for them or by them. But you've got the first-time home buyer is the one that I feel for.
Yeah. So let's just share with the viewers a little bit about your trade. I know there are people that are looking at different opportunities in the real estate market. Appraisers are very much an important part of the whole process. Realtors, appraisers, surveyors, everyone that's involved in the building and selling of houses. Talk a little bit about why you became an appraiser and what the appraisers have to do to get certified every year.
Well, the first thing is it's requirements that have changed since 1993 when they first started to license real estate appraisers. 1993, all you needed was 45 hours worth of classes for 3 years and 175 hours worth of credits in the past, and you could become state certified residential. If you were to try to upgrade from that to certified general, which would be a commercial appraiser, you had to show that you had commercial work history and so forth. The licensed residential people were less highly scrutinized because they were making the claim to have a license only for transactions under $1 million. And the trainee program was exactly what it sounded like, was a trainee program. But it's very difficult to get into the business now because you need to have 2 years of tutelage from an appraiser who's working in the field, and they want you to now have a college degree, which is really unnecessary in my estimation. I obviously have a degree from Eastern Nazarene, and I teach at Quincy College a couple of nights a week. But I don't think it's one of those trades where you necessarily need a college degree. You need some common sense, some good math skills, and you need to be on time.
And you're going to bring your students, speaking of your teaching role, by the registry in the near future to see how a real registry operates. And
Right. Well, as you know, I teach economics in state and local government
Right.
at Quincy College, and we're
Right.
bringing the state and local government students over to see how the
great.
registry works,
Yeah,
and I
that-
appreciate that. That's a great opportunity for them, and it's a great opportunity made by you and the folks at the registry.
yeah, I think it's always important for people to see how exactly the work progresses. It doesn't just get recorded at the counter, it goes through a process. I think that's great. So one quick summary. What would you say to people out there deciding whether to go forward in this marketplace based upon your years and experience as an appraiser?
As I said earlier, the combination of reasonable prices and good interest rates, I think there's no better time than now. And our friend Sharon McNamara always says something along those lines, that if you need to buy, the time to buy is right now. But I think the market says that it's a good time to buy right now. And, I can only see interest rates increasing over the next year or so. So I don't think you should, wither on the vine. I think you should get out and make a home purchase or upgrade or downsize, whatever you plan to do. You should do it now.
So I guess we have a lot more we can say, Jessica, Rob, and Dave Antoine are keeping us moving today pretty well. And,
They do a nice job.
Yeah, we're all working together to try to share information with the people of Plymouth County.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity, John.
Good. Nice to see you, Arthur. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. Stop the texts. Stop the wrecks. Visit us at stoptextsstopwrecks.org.
Welcome back to the Register's Report. This is the third segment of the Register's Report, something we try to do a little lighter in nature. This month is the month of March. We reported on February's activity, but in the month of March, the big holiday in Plymouth County is St. Patrick's Day. Plymouth and Norfolk County in the last federal census have the highest number of people of Irish ancestry of any counties in America. So we talk a little bit about our notable Irish individuals that lived in Plymouth County. I just want to talk quickly. There are 2 parades in Plymouth County that happened this month. The oldest one is in the town of Abington. The second one is in the town of Scituate. A couple of our notable land records will reflect on some of those Irish people that we want to talk about. First image you're going to see coming across the screen is Bailey's Garage. Bailey's Garage is a starting point of the Abington Parade. Edward Bailey started a gas station many years ago. His son Jack, who has taken that over, established the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Abington based upon a bet at the Knights of Columbus as to whether he could start a parade. This year is the 45th year of that parade. And as you can see in the little story that goes with the Bailey's Garage, it's a great tradition. Thousands of people come and watch this parade, the bands and everyone marching in the parade that runs from Abington Center to North Abington. The second notable record we want to talk about is another person who lived in Abington. John L. Sullivan was a very famous boxer. He was nicknamed the Boston Strong Boy. He's the first modern heavyweight champion of the world. He fought many fights, many of them bare knuckle fights. He was there for the transition of the rules from bare knuckles to other with gloves, and he had a tremendous record. And he lost a fight as champion to Gentleman Jim Corbett. Then he decided he would never fight again. He retired to a 60-acre farm in Abington, and is certainly well known as a very well-recognized Irishman from the early 1900s. Another one I want to mention, and you'll see the image of the story coming across the screen, is John Boyle O'Reilly. John Boyle O'Reilly lived in Hull. He grew up in Ireland, joined the English Army, was convicted of plotting for Ireland, was sentenced to death, and then sent to Australia. And in Australia, he escaped and came back to the United States, became a very famous Irish poet. The home that he owned in Hull is now the site of the Hull Public Library. And lastly, but not least, James Kilroy. Everyone has heard the saying Kilroy was here. James Kilroy was a rivet checker. He lived in Halifax, and while he was at Four River Shipyard, he signed his name to those rivets that were paid piecemeal for people so other people wouldn't get credit for it. And you'll see that story coming up on the screen. A great story. Peg Fitzgerald, a former selectman in Halifax, did this with me because James Kilroy was her father. I want to thank PAC TV, David Antoine, and everyone who assisted with this show that allows us to tell people out there what's happening in the Plymouth County real estate market, tell a little bit of our history, and I appreciate both Bill Cohan and Arthur Boyle for joining me on this show, and we'll see you next month. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.